Alone. They spit the word like poison, like it's the sharpest wound they can throw. They believe solitude is the punishment, the exile, the evidence of failure. But for the strongest, solitude isn't exile. It's the crucible. It's the fire where weakness burns away, leaving only what can't be broken. They think the strongest fear it. They don't understand. The strongest are born there. The crowd hides in numbers. They cling to each other, thinking presence equals safety, thinking voices equal power. But strength doesn't come from noise. Noise fades. Noise dies. Strength comes from silence, from the kind of cold emptiness that forces you to face every scar, every fracture, every demon without distraction. And while they run from that confrontation, you walk straight into it. They can't follow because following means dying. They mock what they can't enter. You're alone, they laugh, hoping the words will cage you. But cages only hold the ones who believe in them. You don't believe. You've already broken through every wall they tried to build. What they see as loneliness, you see as clarity. What they call weakness, you call armor. Because the moment you stop needing them, you become something they can't define, can't control, can't destroy. The air is colder in solitude, sharper, cutting deeper than any noise-filled room. But that cold is where the strongest breathe. The silence is heavy, yes, but it's weight that shapes you, not crushes you. Every second alone sharpens your presence into something unbearable for them, something they flinch from without knowing why. The strongest don't fear solitude, they master it. They wear it like armor, like a crown forged in the dark. And when you step back into the light, they see the difference, not in words, not in gestures, but in the way the silence bends around you. They sense it, though they can't name it, the strength of someone who no longer belongs to the crowd, the strength of someone who was reborn in solitude. They laugh at being alone. But the strongest are always alone. They don't just say it, they wear it into every glance, every whisper, every mocking smile. Alone. To them, the word is a verdict, a scar burned into your skin for the world to see. They believe the crowd is the stage, and that absence from it means you've already lost. They measure strength by numbers, by noise, by the illusion of belonging. But illusions are fragile. The moment you step outside of them, the truth becomes unbearable. They are many, yet they are weak. The eyes follow you, sharp and cruel, not because you are broken, but because you remind them of their own fragility. They mock what they fear, and they fear the silence that walks beside you. They huddle closer, laugh louder, trying to convince themselves they still matter, but their voices crack. Their laughter bends under the weight of something they don't understand. And what they don't understand, they despise. They try to paint your solitude as punishment. They whisper stories of failure, betrayal, abandonment, anything to explain away the fact that you chose the path they were too afraid to walk. But deep down, they feel it. In every glance that lingers too long, in every pause between their words, they sense what you've become. They wanted you to crumble under silence, but silence doesn't crumble. Silence builds, silence reshapes, silence devours. You carry that weight without flinching, and the more you carry it, the more their masks slip. Their strength was never strength, it was dependency. Without each other, they are nothing. Without the noise, they are shadows. But you've walked through the silence, faced every demon they've buried, and emerged colder, sharper, unbreakable. Alone is not a scar on you. Alone is the scar they wear every time they realize they cannot follow, so they brand you with the word, thinking it's a curse. But every time they speak it, the curse circles back to them. Alone isn't the wound, it's the weapon, and you wield it with every step, every silence, every unshakable breath. They gave you solitude as punishment. You turned it into power, and that's the truth they'll never say out loud, because to admit it would mean admitting they were wrong. They never said it's okay for you. They said it to silence you, to erase the evidence of what they couldn't face. Every time you tried to show the cracks, the weight, the fire in your chest, they smothered it with those two letters. They didn't want healing, they wanted control. The crowd thrives on dismissals. They prefer neat endings, simple labels, emotions packaged into words small enough to ignore. It's okay became their shield. A quick bandage slapped over wounds they never wanted to see. They weren't protecting you. They were protecting themselves from the truth of you. You noticed the pattern. The tighter the cage, the softer the words. The more they needed you silent, the more they dressed it in comfort. And the more they dressed it, the colder it felt. Their kindness wasn't kindness. It was a leash designed to keep your storm hidden, to keep their world safe. But storms don't vanish because someone calls them clouds. Pain doesn't dissolve because someone says you're fine. Every okay they forced into your mouth became another echo in the silence, another fracture in the mask. And behind that mask, your smile began to sharpen. They thought the words would soothe you, but all they did was remind you how much they feared the truth. The truth isn't that you were fine. The truth is that you were never theirs to define. They don't admit it out loud, but it shows in the way their eyes linger too long, in the way their laughter falters before it dies in the air, in the way silence follows your every step, no matter how many voices try to fill it. They expected to see you broken. Instead, they see you still standing, and that realization cuts deeper than any blade. Because strength in numbers was their only truth, and you've shattered it by existing outside of them. The first flickers of fear arrive not with screams, but with pauses. A hesitation in their words, a stumble in their rhythm, a glance exchanged between two faces who suddenly don't trust the script anymore. They sense something has shifted. You're not returning, not collapsing, not begging for a place in their circle. You've accepted the exile they forced on you. And worse, you've turned it into something they can't define. That undefined presence is what terrifies them most. They try to recover, to bark louder, to drown the unease with noise, but noise no longer holds the same weight. Every laugh sounds thinner, every insult echoes too hollow. Their voices don't dominate anymore. They tremble under the silence you carry. They don't see weakness in your stillness now. They see inevitability. And inevitability has always been stronger than their fragile games. The shift is irreversible. Their illusion begins to fracture with every second you remain unbroken. They realize solitude hasn't crushed you, it's forged you. And that means the rules they built their power on are nothing but lies. If solitude can create strength, then their entire existence, built on dependency, on noise, on numbers, collapses into dust. They sense it, even if they don't say it, and sensing it is enough to plant fear deeper than any insult ever could, and in that fear they reveal themselves. Not the loud, mocking crowd they pretend to be, but fragile shadows desperate to hide from the silence they can't control. They thought they exiled you, but the truth is simpler, colder. They only locked themselves out, because where they see emptiness, you found power. And now they're standing face to face with something they can't laugh away. They thought silence would consume you, that solitude would starve you until nothing remained but ashes. But ashes aren't the end. They're the proof of fire. And from that fire, something colder emerged. The weight they piled on your back didn't break you. It carved you. It stripped away every weakness they mocked, every fracture they hoped would swallow you, until what remained was unrecognizable. The person they thought they buried is gone. What stands before them now is the thing they created, the monster they feared but couldn't stop building. You don't rage. You don't scream. Monsters don't need theatrics. Monsters don't need explanation. You stand in silence, and the silence does the work. Every scar is a declaration. Every pause is a sentence. Every breath is a verdict. They can feel it without you saying a word. The inevitability, the permanence, the presence that bends the air itself. They mocked you for being alone, but alone has become your dominion, and in that dominion, you are untouchable. Their faces betray them. The laughter has died. The bravado has cracked. They glance at one another not for strength but for answers, for a reassurance no one can give. They know what they've unleashed, though they'll never admit it. The silence they forced on you has turned into their cage. They thought they exiled you into emptiness. They exiled themselves into fear. And now every second in your presence feels like trespassing in a place they don't belong. The birth of the monster doesn't announce itself with fire. It arrives with stillness, with control, with silence sharp enough to cut bone. And they see it now, too late to stop it, too late to undo the fractures. too late to pretend you were ever theirs. You are not the outcast. You are the storm, the void, the reminder that monsters aren't born. They're built, and they built you. Subscribe, not for me, not for them, for the silence they tried to bury, because the moment you stop begging for space, you take it. They no longer speak the word alone with laughter. Now it tastes like fear on their tongues. Every time they see you, their voices drop lower. Their steps grow cautious. Their movements betray hesitation. You haven't touched them, haven't raised your voice, haven't lifted a hand, but presence alone has become unbearable. The silence that once mocked you now belongs to you, and under its weight they suffocate. The crowd can't hide what's happening. They shuffle closer together, but even unity can't shield them from what they feel. It isn't your anger that haunts them, it's the absence of it. They prepared for rage, for retaliation, for fire. But monsters don't rage. Monsters don't waste themselves proving what's already inevitable. You stand still, and the stillness becomes their downfall. Every second of your quiet sharpens their dread until it slices through the noise they try to muster. Their rules mean nothing now. The judgments they repeated like gospel dissolve the moment they meet your eyes. They see a reflection they don't want to face, fragility hidden behind noise, dependency disguised as strength. And you are the opposite. Solitude stripped away dependency, silence stripped away illusion. What remains is something they can't measure, can't predict, can't define. That's why they tremble, because you are no longer a person in their world. You are the void their world falls into. Even their leaders falter. The voices that once silenced entire rooms stumble, crack, fade halfway through sentences. The louder they try to sound, the more brittle their words become. They don't control the silence anymore. The silence controls them. You don't move, but the ground bends around you. You don't speak, but the air carries your presence like a shadow pressing against every wall. Their fear multiplies not because of what you do, but because of what you don't. And in that realization, the balance shifts forever. You don't belong to their circle, to their noise, to their fragile illusions of value. You belong to solitude, and solitude has crowned you. They thought being alone was your weakness, but now every step you take in silence proves the truth. They can't escape. The strongest are always alone. They can't explain it, but they feel it, like the air has grown heavier, like shadows stretch farther when you enter the room. Your silence follows them everywhere, pressing down on their lungs, bending their thoughts, turning their noise brittle. It isn't your words that haunt them, it's your absence. It's the stillness that refuses to fade, the presence that refuses to bow. They thought they left you outside the circle, but now it's the circle that feels trapped, and you are the cage. The bravest try to mask it first. They speak louder, laugh harder, hoping volume will drown out the unease. But the cracks show. Their laughter ends too fast. Their words falter mid-sentence. Their eyes betray the panic they're desperate to hide. They glance at each other, searching for reassurance. But reassurance doesn't exist in a room where silence rules. Every smile they force becomes another confession that they no longer believe their own performance. The weaker ones break sooner. They avoid your gaze, step back without realizing it, fold into themselves. They know what's happening even if they won't say it. Solitude has given you something they'll never have. You've turned what they call exile into dominion. They depended on each other, but you depend on nothing. And dependency can't stand against something that's untouchable. You've become the presence they measure themselves against, and the more they measure, the smaller they feel. It grows worse in the dark. At night, when the crowd disperses, when the noise fades, when there's nothing left but the echo of their own thoughts, they hear you. Not your voice, not your footsteps, but the silence you left behind. It clings to them, heavier than any shout, sharper than any blade. They tried to bury you in solitude, but solitude has buried them instead. Alone doesn't feel safe anymore. Alone feels like you, and that's when fear becomes permanent. Not the kind that makes them scream, but the kind that never leaves. The kind that lingers in the bones, whispers in the dark, burns in the silence. You don't need to move, don't need to strike, don't need to prove. You've become the shadow they can't escape, the storm they can't predict, the reminder they can't silence. And in that shadow, they finally see the truth. Monsters aren't made in the crowd. Monsters are forged alone. They used to believe control belonged to the loudest voice, to the crowd that could drown one person in noise. But noise doesn't bend walls. Noise doesn't fracture resolve. Silence does. And now, your silence has become something more than absence. It's become gravity. It drags every eye toward you, bends every conversation around you, forces every thought to stumble into the truth they've been running from. The strongest are always alone. Watch how the room shifts when you enter. Their shoulders stiffen, their words scatter, their laughter turns brittle. They try to act as if nothing has changed, but everything has. You don't need to announce your strength. It announces itself in the cracks of their composure. They're no longer mocking you. They're reacting to you. And reactions don't belong to the strong. They belong to the afraid. Even their leaders falter now. The ones who once smirked the loudest, who leaned on numbers like armor, find themselves shrinking under your gaze. Their words dry up before they leave their mouths. Their certainty melts into hesitation. They realize too late that unity was never power. It was dependency disguised as strength, and dependency can't survive in the presence of someone who no longer needs anyone. You've turned solitude into dominion, silence into a weapon, absence into presence, and the more you stand unshaken, the more the crowd begins to fracture. They whisper among themselves, not to mock you, but to calm themselves. Every whisper is an admission. They are not enough. They never were. Their strength only existed as long as you believed in their noise. You don't believe anymore. And that unbelief has crushed their foundation more completely than rage ever could. Now, the silence stretches across the room like chains they can't see but can feel cutting into their skin. They shift in their seats, shuffle their feet, avoid your eyes, but it doesn't matter. They're already bound. They thought they cast you into solitude, but solitude has crowned you, and the crown weighs heavy on them because it doesn't bend, doesn't break, doesn't vanish. It remains. They're not standing in a room anymore. They're standing in a cage they built with their own hands. The walls aren't made of stone or steel. They're made of glances, whispers, and fear. They thought solitude would trap you, but it has trapped them instead. Every time you walk past, the air folds in on itself, thick and hard to breathe, a reminder that the strongest don't need a crowd to become unbreakable. The strongest build their power in silence, and you've become the proof. They try to act like nothing has changed, but their movements betray them. The same hands that once pointed and mocked now fidget, tremble, and clutch at invisible walls. They lean closer to each other, but closeness no longer protects them. It exposes them. It shows how small they've become under the weight of the silence they once threw at you like a weapon. They can't even speak your name without feeling the echo of it inside their heads. Their world unravels not with noise, but with the absence of it. Their voices bounce off the walls and return hollow, stripped of power. Their laughter dies mid-air, as if swallowed by something unseen. They wanted you to feel isolated, to believe exile equals defeat. But exile became the crucible, and you stepped out of it as something else. Now, they're the ones isolated, in a crowd, surrounded, yet utterly alone. What terrifies them most isn't what you might do. It's that you don't have to do anything at all. You've become the silence inside their skulls, the presence in their sleep, the weight behind every word they're afraid to say. They can't predict you, can't provoke you, can't own you. Their fear grows not because of your actions, but because of your stillness. Monsters don't chase, they wait. And waiting has turned into their nightmare. This is the final cage, and it isn't yours, it's theirs. They built it by mocking what they couldn't control. They tightened it every time they whispered alone. They locked themselves inside when they believed numbers equal strength, and now, standing before you, they finally understand. The strongest are always alone. But alone doesn't mean empty. Alone means free. Alone means untouchable. Alone means them staring at you through the bars of their own fear, realizing they will never stand where you stand. They thought solitude would bury you. They thought thought silence would erase you, but solitude doesn't bury the strongest, it crowns them. Silence doesn't erase the strongest, it defines them. And now, as you stand untouched by their noise, they finally see the truth written in every scar, every pause, every unshakable breath. You were never theirs to break. You were never theirs to cage. You were always walking a path they couldn't follow. Their illusions are ashes now. The mockery, the laughter, the whispers, all of it has collapsed under the weight of what you've become. They look at you and realize solitude didn't create absence. It created permanence. The absence of need, the absence of weakness, the absence of chains, and in its place a presence that bends their world until it shatters. They thought they gave you exile, but they gave you dominion. They thought they marked you with loss, but they carved your strength instead. The crowd no longer laughs. They no longer point. They no longer pretend their numbers matter. All they can do is feel the silence press against their bones, forcing them to recognize what they never wanted to admit. Together, they are fragile. Alone, you are infinite. And infinity doesn't bend to the rules of the weak. It devours them. It rewrites the game in silence they can't endure. You don't need to fight them. You don't need to explain. You don't even need to move. Monsters aren't proven by violence. They are proven by survival. They are proven by the way silence becomes unbearable for those who once mocked it. And in that proof lies the final truth. They didn't create your weakness. They revealed your strength. They didn't end you. They ended themselves. So let them remember. Let them choke on the word they once used as a weapon. Let alone echo in their minds until it becomes the anthem of their own collapse. Because you don't just stand apart, you stand above. You don't just survive solitude, you rule it. And in that rule lies the one truth they can never escape. The strongest are always alone, and alone is never defeat. Alone is the throne.